1692 means we got shots fired at 4:15 a.m.
Our first tipping point tonight, new and critical information coming from authorities in Las Vegas. Officials now say the attacker, Stephen Paddock, shot Mandalay Bay security guard Jesus Campos 6 minutes before the attack instead of after the attack. This changes the whole equation of the timeline we thought we knew. If the security guard was shot before Paddock opened fire on concert goers, what took police so long to arrive at Paddock's room and stop the assault? This leads to a myriad of new questions. What took police 19 minutes to reach Paddock's room? Why didn't they know about the security guard being shot before they found him in the hallway? Who notified police of the location of Paddock's room if it wasn't Campos? What ultimately stopped Paddock's assault on concert goers? And how did law enforcement in Las Vegas miss this critical part of the timeline for 9 days? Even the sheriff sounded defensive when he was announcing the news. Watch.
So let me help you with that, Ken, because you picked up on it. Yes, the timeline associated with the original shot and Mr. Campos has changed through investigation, as I have conveyed to you from the very beginning. And your zest for information and my zest to ensure the public safety and the calming of their minds is some things are going to change. Now, they are minute changes. Okay, there's not this all-encompassing answer associated with the information that we presented before. In other words, it's not completely inaccurate. But what we have learned is Mr. Campos was encountered by the suspect prior to his shooting to the outside world.
Joining me now, nationally renowned forensic criminologist Dr. Ron Martinelli. Dr. Ron, thanks for coming on the show.
Always a pleasure to be with you and your viewers.
I appreciate you being so available this week to break this stuff down. This is new and critical information. Like I said in the introduction, the sheriff said that it's a minute change. But Dr. Ron, if you're looking at this forensically, if you're analyzing, trying to piece together what actually happened throughout that whole evening, it seems to me this is a rather large change. It's not a minute change. Because if the security guard was shot before Paddock opened fire on concert goers, Dr. Ron, what took police so long then to arrive at Paddock's room to stop the assault?
Well, Liz, I actually don't think that it took the police that long to arrive at Mr. Paddock's room. Let's just consider, and we'll talk about the 6 minutes and how that can be accounted for. But just remember that the police are responding to call or calls for service. And so it has to go through a dispatch center. Who's ever talking to the police in the 911 emergency center, that's picked up by a complaint taker, and all of their information is given to the complaint taker and then transmitted to a dispatcher. So we're dealing with two people, and we're dealing with information that is imperfect, it's inaccurate, and not necessarily timely. All right, so then the police have to be dispatched to that, and then they have to actually physically respond to the hotel complex, and then they have to take an elevator. They're not going to go up 32 stairs, flights of stairs. So they have to take a service elevator. That's going to take some time to get up there. And then once they're there, then they have to have their encounter with the security guard and to try to determine what is going on. Now,
right, and let me pause you right there for just a second, because I want to clarify something. That's part of my question. Is reports are saying that these police officers were not aware that the security guard had been shot until they already reached the 32nd floor. It seems that they might not have been notified. The security guard might not have made that call. So that speaks to me. I mean, isn't that some kind of fairly serious breach in communication, that after approaching this room, being shot, the security guard wouldn't have communicated with the overall hotel security or the police department?
I think that's a really good question, and one that maybe a lot of your viewers would have. I mean, the forensic answer would be, of course, that we'd have to review the 911 calls to find out what information was imparted to the 911 control center. And that information comes from two directions. It either comes from, people that are staying at the hotel on that floor, or it comes from that security guard. Don't forget, the security guard has got a radio, and he has to provide information. Now, what could obstruct the security guard from giving information? In this particular case, he's shot. He might be shocky. He could have a problem with we refer to psychologically as hypervigilance, which is defined as shock, panic, confusion, or maybe even freezing. And the confusion and the freezing might account for inaccurate or a lack of information getting to the police at that time.
Right, and are we aware, or do we have any information about why the security guard approached Paddock's room in the first place? What he was doing in that hallway,
Yes.
why he approached the door? Because it seems to me that that would have been communicated to someone else in the security apparatus at the hotel, which would have cut down on that response time. And I don't know if we have that information yet.
Yes, well, actually, I have that information. Okay, so the Mandalay Bay hotel complex has got a policy that if a door is left ajar in excess of 60 minutes, then there is a response by a security guard. Now, this is an unarmed security guard, and merely what they have to check on this is they have something that is like an electronic wand. It's often referred to as a pike. And just picture a cylindrical object about this big, and it is electronic, and you actually touch it to a button-like knob next to the door, and that gives them an immediate timestamp as to when that security guard got there and checked on the door, because they have to basically wand that pike against that transponder.
So
So
just a second, let me make sure I'm clear. So was Paddock's door left ajar then? That's why the security guard approached the room, because they had a report that the door was open?
yes, I believe so. But don't forget, Mr. Paddock had already secreted electronic, cameras, wireless cameras, to a cart outside of his door, and then also set up a secondary camera system in the peephole of the door. So Mr. Paddock was alerted by movement, like these cameras are, and then he came over and opened fire on the security guard. Now, my understanding is that he was firing low, and this security guard was struck somewhere in the lower leg, perhaps the calf. He was either struck with a bullet or bullet splay or ricochet from the door. And then the security guard has to retreat. So, just to give the viewers some insight, that wing up there on the 32nd floor is at least 50-yard long. And out of those 50 yards, there's only a couple of alcoves that you can crawl into to keep yourself from being fired upon again. So picture what it would be like to be struck in the leg, feel shocky, and crawl down a 50-yard hallway to an alcove. And then you've sort of got to gather yourself together and get on the radio. So do you see how that's sort of burning up the time here and how that might account, especially with hypervigilance, to 6 minutes?
It certainly does change the timeline. And Dr. Ron, I guess it brings me to this question too. If it wasn't the security guard approaching Paddock's room, as we originally thought, towards the end of the shooting rampage here, what ultimately stopped Paddock? What stopped him from his assault if it wasn't the security guard?
Well, it could be a number of things, and we don't know that yet because we don't know if they had ballistically tested those weapons. Don't forget, he's using a bump stock on a couple of those weapons. The weapons are also very hot. The weapons could jam because they were hot. They could jam because the butt stock created a jam. Could have been a magazine feed, could have been a malfunction. It could have been all of those things. And we don't know yet why he stopped. Now, can I make also a comment? Because the sheriff brought up something yesterday, Undersheriff brought up something about, body armor in an escape route or maybe an escape plan. And that's still yet to be determined. But, I'd like everybody to just consider another reason for wearing body armor. One reason, besides escape to wear body armor, is if Mr. Paddock knows he's going to take hits from law enforcement, but yet he still wants to rain fire down on the concert goers. That's a way that he could prevent himself from taking a mortal wound and still be able to return fire, even while engaged by law enforcement.
Right, it's all horrifying, and like you said, a lot of it is just speculation, but this certainly, in my opinion, changes the whole equation of what we thought happened and what we thought stopped the shooter ultimately towards the end of that 9 minutes. Dr. Ron, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it, sir.